Okay, we are live. We'll kick it off.
Okay. Thank you. This is the February 1st, 2023 meeting of the City of Charleston Board of Zoning Appeals Site Design. Present are Amanda Barton, Jeff Webb, Kelvin Eugene, myself, Joel Adrian. Present from the city staff, Eric Schultz. These proceedings are being recorded. We ask that those who speak identify themselves for the record. We will conduct this meeting in usual fashion. We'll first hear information from city staff about the application and their recommendation. If the recommendation is favorable and no one objects to the application, the matter is uncontested. The board reserves the right to ask questions of staff, applicant, prior to rendering a decision. If, however, the city recommends against the application or there is opposition to the application, we treat the application as contested and hear from the applicant and anyone else who is in favor of the application. Next, we hear from anyone opposed, followed by a short rebuttal from the applicant. We then close the public hearing portion of the meeting for that particular application. We'll open discussion to the Board of Zoning Appeals members only. We'll then make a decision to approve with conditions, or deny the application. Board of Zoning Appeals, the site design has the authority to do three things. 1, hear appeals to decisions of the zoning administrator. 2, grant special exceptions of fact-finding function of the board. And 3, grant variances to the zoning ordinance if the application meets the hardship test outlined in section 54.924 of the ordinance. The board may deliberate, make a final decision on a matter by a majority vote of members present at the hearing and qualified to vote, provided that not less than a quorum are present and qualified to vote. For a variance to be granted, the Board of Zoning Appeals must make the following findings. A, there are extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to the particular piece of property. B, these conditions do not generally apply to other property in the vicinity. C, because of these conditions, the application of the ordinance to the particular piece of property would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property. And D, the authorization of the variance would not be of substantial detriment to the adjacent property or to the public good. The character of the district would not be harmed by the granting of the variance. With that, we do have a deferred item. My agenda here, I think it was item B2. Maybank Highway is being deferred and will not be heard today. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Then we'll begin with item A1, which is a review of the minutes for the January 4th, 2023 meeting. Questions or comments on the minutes?
Make the motion we move to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
All right. Motion for approval by Amanda, seconded by Jeff. All in favor? Aye in favor.
Aye.
Favor.
Any opposed? That motion is approved 4-0. All right, so our next item is going to be item A2. It is 99 Bull Street. The TMS number is 457-0301-157. It's zoned STR. Requested variance from section 54.327 to allow the removal of one grand tree.
Okay, this item was deferred from last month. We have the teams together. This is the application. Removal of one grand tree. Letter from Ms. Jennifer Kelly. So the site is on the south side of Bull Street, mid-block between Ashley and Rutledge. It's zoned STR. It's one of the larger lots on that block. It's a very sizable structure and a secondary structure. Aerial view of the property. This is the existing condition minus the trees. They were drawn in. I didn't require a survey to be done for this particular case. You can see that there's a live oak on the front right of the property, a live oak in the back parking area, and then a pecan tree that actually was permitted by the city recently due to it being storm damaged and classified as hazardous. So that's removed. This is a letter that the applicant submitted from Chris Gerards, who's a ISA board certified arborist, 10/13/2022. The owner apparently had this individual inspect this tree, 25-inch live oak. Some points there, uplifting the fence pillar, exposed roots and drive, no visible scars, cavities, and this individual rated it as a B. The issue why the tree's here is the column. It is, leaning into the public right of way, and it's my understanding the owner would like to have it restored back to an upright position, and the tree is directly behind it. The applicant has retained Rosen and Associates, and I'll let Mr. Rosen get into his findings, but this is the letter that was submitted. A subsequent email from Mr. Rosen about the column. I'm on the fence, to be honest with you, and I think there's maybe a resolution for the fence and the tree to coexist. I'll just straight up with you right now, but anyway, some discussion and responding to this email. Between last month and today's meeting, the applicant has retained Charleston tree experts, Marshall DeBow, inspected the tree and did a very thorough evaluation, and I have a copy of that in front of you. This is the email with the pictures and but here are some of the photos that included. And then I took photos just to give you a little sense of the tree and its relationship to the city right away. You can see that I'm walking east on the sidewalk. You can see how the pillar has a lean. The tree, in my opinion, the leaf color, the leaf size looks typical for a live oak. March around the photo, the right photo shows the base of the tree in relationship and how the pier looks like it's kind of, I have no idea how this wall and the wrought iron is constructed per se, because there's nothing exposed, but it's kind of cracked away from the knee wall. It tends to be still in its original location. You can see the crack there. This is the backside. Property has driveways on both the east and west side of the property, so and it loops around the back. So this tree, in my opinion, is accustomed to some compaction and the way the roots have grown into the driveway. See, there's a drain. Ooh. Distance the tree is from the base of the pier. Some scarring from tires running over a pretty nice little root mat there, if you will. So recent documents submitted, I think the one is 33 pages long, so I didn't put the whole thing into PowerPoint, but there's the cover letter, and then you have it in front of you. And then the consulting arborist also sent the conchs, the fungi that was present on the tree, to Clemson's lab to verify the species, and so we have that report back from Clemson, and that's also in the back of your packet. So staff recommends deferral for even more investigative work with the potential resolution to have both the column and tree coexist. I think I would recommend some air spading at the interface of the tree and the column to clearly understand what is applying pressure on that column. Conduct foundation discovery work, figure out how deep that foundation is on that pier, the material it's made out of. I've spoken with BAR, and I don't think they have enough information about the materials columns made out of and how they would view a deconstruction and reconstruction, but thinking there's maybe a creative way to build this thing back, and then conduct tree discovery work. As the report indicates, they classify the tree as an F. Live oak. I don't carry sophisticated instruments. We just don't. But when I knock on it with a piece of wood, I feel it's solid. There's a reference that maybe the tree's hollow, so resistograph maybe should be used to really dive in into the trunk of the root layer. Then maybe the track form, evaluation form should become part of the document so we can see how each part of the tree was evaluated under the tree risk assessment. And then at the bottom of that form, there's a section about maybe how to look at mitigation options. So I'm just not convinced under the variance or for staff to approve the tree. I have the standards are two. One is if the tree is hazardous, infested with insects, or damaged, irreparably damaged, I can do a staff level approval on it. Or if the tree was causing structural damage to a habitable residence. The ordinance does not give me the ability to staff approve trees for tinkering with landscape elements, walks, driveways, walls, etc. So Charleston is very unique in the sense that we have quirkiness when it comes to built elements and trees. I mean, we have so many street trees that destroy our sidewalks, but we don't cut the trees down. We sometimes modify the sidewalk. We bump up with different type of materials sometimes. So anyway, I'm asking for a little more deferral and a little more investigative work. So that's staff's recommendation.
Thank you, Eric. The applicant is present and would like to be heard. Sweet.
Working?
Good.
Okay. Hi, Jennifer Novelli, the applicant. I submitted this back in November. I just want to quickly respond to something that Eric just said about you guys in Charleston not being able to make changes to structures that aren't habitable, and you don't do this for sidewalks. A sidewalk can't fall on anybody. So every time I walk by this building, I'm like terrified this pillar is going to crush somebody just passing by. I think it represents an imminent hazard to human life. If you stand, I mean, the pictures I don't think do it justice. If you go walk by it, the thing is really leaning out. As for the tree itself, Marshall Beto is here, and he's an arborist, and he's going to speak to why he gave the tree an F rating. And then Russell Rosen, who's a structural engineer, is going to talk about why it doesn't make sense to, or it's not, he doesn't believe it's possible for us to use a helical pile of units or pier to drill down into the tree. Also, the pillar is next, or the tree is next to a drain line, which also complicates things. And we have an email from the landscape architect about that. This isn't like an appeal for aesthetics. I understand, wanting to preserve live oaks. I have another on the property, and I'm happy to plant more in the back, but I really, we have a lot of buildings, and I deal in liabilities, and I look at things from what kind of insurance claims is going to be? How could this harm someone? What are the risks here? And I just think this pillar is such a huge risk that if someone walks by this thing, and you guys should approve that pecan tree to be removed from the back of my property because the neighbor wrote me a letter after Ian. He was afraid the tree was going to fall in his house. And I mean, this, as far as I'm concerned, this is like equivalent. Because I feel like that pillar is going to fall on somebody. So that's where I'm at. So I don't know if you want to go first, Russell? Okay. Russell, go.
Thank you.
Share a few things with you. One of the pages here is
We know you, but if you would state your name and address for the
I'm
record.
sorry. I'm Russell Rosen. Anyway, I'd like to refer you to the sketch that I have there. Basically, this tree is quite close to that column. And I like that term, coexist. I don't think I've heard that before. And you know, I've worked, I don't work a lot with trees, I've worked a number of trees and putting foundations in and making accommodations for trees. But on this, what I'm thinking would happen is around that column, which I believe is a brick column, is that we'd have to put some sort of a sheet pile assembly between the tree and the column in order to divert the root structure. And my gut reaction is we would lose anywhere from 15 to 30% of the root structure surrounding the column. Sure how a live oak grows, but I'm fascinated and want to bring to your attention the abundance of root structure that's above the ground. The root structure is blocked by the column and by adjacent drainage structure that's in the driveway, and we really don't have a good photograph of that. But there are things that do handicap that tree. The adjacent low fence with the ironwork above it has been displaced also. So I want to bring that to your attention as far as any effort to salvage the tree. That tree is quite close to the column, it's quite close to the drainage structure. A lot of the root structure is above grade. Marshall Miller is going to speak to you about the background of the tree. Also in your package, and he was not able to attend today, we asked Glenn Gardner to take a look at this situation. And there's 2 emails from him and the materials I gave you, where he is not optimistic about this situation longevity. And I think he also shares with Marshall concerns about the condition of the tree. The emails speak for themselves. Thank you very much. If you have any questions.
Not at this time, thank you. And if you would state your name and address for the record, please.
Marshall BZA, consulting arborist, the Charleston Tree Experts, 2851 Northern Highway, Johnstown. Real quick question, Eric. Does the city allow for staff approval for diseased trees?
Hazardous, diseased, and irreparably damaged.
Well, this tree is diseased. It's diseased beyond repair. The original arborist that inspected the tree, Chris Gerard, I think he gave the tree a B rating because he failed to conduct the analysis correctly. He missed the fungal conks altogether. It was listed in his report as a board-certified master arborist. You're required to document any defects, any fungal growths, anything present that would be of a potential risk, even if it was hazardous or not. So it has to be stated in the report. It's not really a report; it's a one-page document. Essentially, there's 13 fungal conks on the tree. We sent the conks to Clemson. They came back as white rot, extremely aggressive form of it. It's an elbow patch crust. It's basically terminal for the tree. Only thing this tree is going to do at this point is spread disease up and down that street to all the other live oaks. It's not a benefit. It's not a specimen tree anymore. It's not a safe tree either. It's going to topple over at some point. And it's probably not going to be in a hurricane or maybe after a rain event. Diseased trees like this, typically in storm scenarios, what we scrape off houses are green trees that appear to be healthy, that have fungal conks or tannic acid leaking from the trunk columns. It's not dead trees like most people think. Dead trees just crumble. In fact, they don't even really crumble in hurricane events because the wind passes right by them because there's no canopy. But diseased trees with full canopies are like umbrellas. Wind just carries them right over. You can't determine when they're going to come over oftentimes because you don't know how much decay is taking place. You don't know how much lignin and cellulose has been stripped out of the root collar, out of the trunk column, how long that pathogen's been there digesting that material. But given there's 13 conchs on this tree, probably 15 years, I'm actually surprised the tree's still standing. Documented in my report, you'll see where we removed that pecan in, I think that was over Christmas break. I had a lot more pictures, but I didn't really feel it was necessarily included, but that thing had a lot of decay as well. It's a very old property, very established. These trees have no doubt been pruned on multiple times over the years. Typically, tree services actually do more harm to trees than benefit by pruning trees because every cut on a tree is a wound, inflicting more damage. Chances are it's been introduced for some time. Cars are driving over the root plate of this tree on a daily basis all the time. Really, the tree just needs to be removed because it's a hazard to the general public. It's a lawsuit waiting to happen for Jennifer. It's going to affect the neighboring trees the longer it stays there. It's just an incubator at this point, and honestly, I don't know why it wasn't approved already. The column on that fence is, if you can tell on page 13, is protruding out really far. It's kind of scary to look at. Typically, there's not much to this column. During a tree service, we've interacted with a lot of columns over the years, especially in downtown. Usually they're like 6 inches deep. There's not much holding them there to keep them from falling over in the first place. The root plate of that tree is, or any root plate is typically 5 to 6 times the width of the tree. Any cutting in that root plate is almost always fatal, as we see in new construction a lot. The critical root zone is going to be equal to 1 foot for every inch. So that's 25 feet from the tree. So typically anything that's happening within that first 25 foot of the tree radius, you're already looking at introducing a wood decay pathogen there by causing damage to the tree. That's probably another good area where it got introduced as well. The tree is re-wounded every day on a daily basis for several decades. There's a storm drain there as well that's feet from the tree. It looks like it's clogged up. Probably gonna find a lot of root mass in there. By the time everyone does everything there that needs to happen, because by the time they start tearing that fence, then they're gonna find they got to clear the storm drain, so he's going to come out and do that, cut out some more root. It's not going to be anything left of this tree. It's just going to be a hazard sitting there, putting the general public at risk. You just don't know when it's going to fall over. Let's see, what else? Can't think of anything else. Yeah, like I said, it's extremely hazardous. Board certified master arborist, registered consulting arborist, only 1 or 2 in the state, RCAs, and only 1 or 6 BCMAs in the state. That's why I write these booklet style reports, because that's the industry standard, not a 1-page letter. Also, the track, I'm also a track qualified arborist and a tree appraisal qualified arborist. I think we went into that. But the track, the document that Eric mentioned, it's a basic training form for people that are beginning track that don't know how to really assess a tree. I think we got away from those about 6 years ago. So we just put all that data in our software anyway. It's just collected by default in my company. Oh yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anybody else present that's in favor of the application would like to be heard? Anybody present that's opposed to the application would like to be heard?
We received no written comments for this particular item.
I'll do. We will close this application to the public. It will be open to the board for discussion. Any questions?
I had a curious question just for maybe for Mr. Rosen about the adjacent wall. Is it leaning the knee wall?
It's leaning some. but, and I don't know if there's a photograph that shows where the column has moved even further away. The adjacent low wall is moving some.
This is speculation, but you think that's because of the footer conditions of the column versus the wall, or just the direction the root's taken?
Based on my experience, it all has to do with the tree root structure pushing against the low wall and the column. And given the proximity of the column, it's gotten underneath the base of the column more so.
Situations where we've asked people to bridge over the roots with a rebuild of the wall. And it's also a perfect example of VAR trumping trees, which we're gonna need more of them. We're gonna need a historic wall in another 30 years, but that said, I wonder if there isn't something that could be done. I find it interesting how different the two arborist reports are. And it's really hard to read this diagnostic report. And I see Marshall, you referred to it as white rot. What's the scientific name of that pathogen?
Let's see, is that from well, we got, it's a villainous species.
A what?
It's a villainous species.
So when you said that it, because I know I've seen a lot of oaks recently that do have small conchs, in between, in the bark.
Yep.
I have it actually on my own 66-inch live oak in my front yard. Now I know certain arborists have said it's not a problem, but I guess it depends on which of the fungus it
That's
is.
correct. Yeah,
Because
there are
conchs tend to look alike.
bark decay fungi as well. This isn't one of them.
So when you say that it's contagious, so what, the spores? Is it?
Yep, exactly. It's gonna transmit through airborne and through root system as well.
Did you find it on any other trees?
I did not. I'm actually familiar with the live oak in the back. I didn't see it in the rear as well. I didn't inspect every tree on that street though. I mean, it could be, I would assume, you see it there, it's been there for, I'd assume by the age of those fungal conchs, it's been an incubator for about 10 years on that site. So it's probably beginning to infect other trees if it hasn't already. So it's going to keep spreading. And back to the other arborist, like I said, he failed to perform a correct assessment. Just really did a poor job.
Eric, question to you. If the board decided to approve the request,
Yes.
Mitigation requirement,
It's a category 1 tree. It's
100%.
so it's 100% of the DBH inches lost. Yes.
Unfortunately, the tree's wonderful as your one. I agree that with what Russell said to Jeff, most likely the trees in that column where they're taking the wall, the long length, that column's at 10 piece.
You could also ask to remove the column and somehow support the new wall other.
So
My concern is, just besides regardless of the health or non-health of the tree, is I don't see that column being able to go back in that location. And I'm not an architect, but I don't know how that symmetry of that wall along there, what that would impact. Can't go into the driveway, it can't go that way, so it would seem to impact the aesthetics of the wall.
right, the column's gotta go upright. Tree needs to go. The tree doesn't go and put column upright. It's just
Where the column
it's
goes.
gonna push it down.
And the
The
column
column
goes.
goes, but yeah. opposite side, right?
You've got to somehow support the end of the knee wall.
So I think the report or the email from Glenn is, this kind of gives you the insight to the VAR and that precedence in their mind over the tree.
Is that the top email you're looking at?
Yeah.
What takes precedence?
So, I don't know, it would be nice to have had, with a mitigation plan and say, hey, we're gonna do X, Y, Z here on the property. The tree will be a significant loss to the public. So, if you don't mind, if the can is kicked, we asked to truly verify all that Eric had asked for.
Eric, where would VAR come into play when that wall is touched? They would have to
Oh, yeah, they'll have
weigh
to
in.
submit, application to dismantle and rebuild.
Is it relevant that there's a conservation easement here in general?
Where is the conservation easement?
On the whole front of the building, so everything I've had to do through Aprilwood. So they have to sign off on any, like, I'm having this whole iron fence redone, and they had to sign off, it has to be done exactly the same way, the way it was done. And that pillar is part of it, for that column.
So Historic Charleston has an easement on it.
Yeah.
So to approve removal of the tree? Conservations, would they have to also approve, if we approved it?
I don't know what the easement covers. I don't know if it covers vegetation. Not sure. We have to ask April Wood.
Enters the tree. So certainly there have been instances where we have required the tree to stay and not approved the application. There have been instances, I think it was 5-6 months ago, it was in the backyard, and we allowed that to be removed for the restoration of the historic.
But they had made an effort previously to root prune and bridge over it.
They did.
Question here to me is, I would normally say, if it was the B rating on the tree, they figure out how to do the wall and make that work. What concerns me is this report is very different than in terms of the health of the tree. But I wish Jennifer was here to weigh in on that, but she's not.
Same here.
That's my concern.
But at the same time, I guess I would say, Eric, you put your referral requirement. Certainly would be, there's no harm, 30 days. If we did say defer, then we'll ask the questions. And ask for,
I've done the air spading to look at that in a similar situation.
is it beneficial?
Mhm.
And moving to defer and get that extra information and then know for certain that the right decision's been made. Any thoughts?
I guess I think there's two main questions. The health of the tree, and these findings could further that point or take it back, and then constructability, if that air spading shows where looking at this, I suspect we know where the mass is. It's all underneath that footer. But I guess there is a chance somewhere that there's there is a gap or a hole, right? That you have the potential. And I agree with Mr. Rosen. I think you'd have to do some sort of barrier to prevent this from happening again and give the roots a way to go. And so I guess I'm thinking, just looking at it with non-expert opinion, that those chances are pretty slim that you do that you're gonna find a place to put this column or the new foundation for it.
Yeah, it wasn't maintained well.
The trees are going to have to build it up. It's probably very, very deep.
And the
Yeah,
wall
they
would
probably
be
would be grinding those
ridge
out.
over.
Right.
And, that doesn't work for column.
No, because it's the end of the line.
Yeah, it's out
Unless you
there
had another
hanging.
way to support, release the knee wall.
But
And then you
also,
take the column out, much to the dismay of the VAR. And the
Right.
conservation over.
I'd also like to point out, based on the arborist's testimony, I know the applicant seemed more concerned about the column, but it seems like the tree is presenting really even more dangerous situation than the column.
I think an F is a pretty strong statement.
Well, I was concerned about the different ratings based on what the arborist has testified before us. And I'm not seeing a full report from the other arborists because it does seem very strange that you go from a B to an F in a matter of months. But the arborist is saying that the other arborist, my interpretation of what he's saying is that he either wasn't qualified or didn't.
Yes. Well, while they're looking at that, I have a question, Marshall. How prevalent do you think the white rot is in the area? I mean, in general.
In our area, we see various pathogens several times a week. We touch a lot of trees in our company though. Hurricane Ian, we scraped 27 trees off the houses in 10 days. Every single one of them had signs of disease, every scenario.
Of the Philnius.
Oh, that one
Yeah.
specifically?
Yeah. Mhm.
It's, I don't think I kept account of which pathogens we saw. At that point, we're just, you're a race against time to clear the structure to tarp before rain gets in and homeowners' policies are disqualified. I believe that Clemson did make a thorough analysis that the tree was hazardous. Paragraph.
It's just our copies. I can't read it.
This, I can provide you a copy?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, we have it. It's small and I tried to use my magnifier.
The report.
Thank you.
That's the diagnostic.
How much better.
Yeah, that's just.
The roots typically, the Wood Wide Web allows attachment of all the root systems underground of trees. That typically, the roots of a tree would extend 3 times the height of a tree. And that's the real concern. Toppling over is one concern, and then the next concern is how that disease is going to spread. It has roots fused with the trees in the back, trees down the sidewalk, and of course that just continues on down the street. Typically, healthy trees aren't susceptible to pathogen. It's going to be damaged trees that are in some sort of state of decline or stress. So not able to produce the chemicals necessary to wall and decay.
Well, that's what I had been thinking, is usually live oaks do compartmentalize generally.
Typically extremely well. Versus this case, I think that root plate being driven over on a daily basis, the limited growing medium, there's just a lot of factors against this tree.
So,
Also, further
did you hear that question? Is there a way to treat the fungus?
with this, no. Most of these pathogens, because you have a degradation of the cell walls. Trees don't regenerate, or like humans or other animals. They just wall off, and they attempt to wall off the decay. But if those walls fail, then the decay just keeps spreading. So a resistant graft wouldn't really do much benefit in this scenario. A resistant graft is going to help detect hollow in the tree, but the pathogen just digesting lignin and cellulose is not going to pick that up.
There was a reference somewhere about the tree being potentially hollow inside. I think that's why he had recommended.
The base, yeah, I've detected some hollow in the base. But that's going to be down in the root plate. I don't know if they're going to really get low enough. Bring resistant grafts about a foot off the ground.
I guess we're at a point of either making a motion with staff recommendation for the deferral, or what does everybody think? That, or a yea or a nay?
Yeah, I would formally say it's go with deferral for more fact finding, but I'm not. I don't see that changing where we're at in a month. What I'm seeing, but I agree.
So which is this tree?
Can we go back to that site plan, Eric?
The site
We're
plan?
looking at this photo here, and there, or is that another development on the other side of the driveway?
That's the
There's a small
common.
tree.
Tree here.
No, it's something smaller oak maybe.
I see it. You're not down there.
That's further in. So Marshall, on page 12 of your report, standing on the driveway looking out towards Bull Street, and you can see the red arrow going to the tree in question, and then on the left-hand side, there's another tree. It looks like it's right up on that wall there. I guess I'm just
I think that's a crepe.
great, and that's what I thought. Looking at it, I thought it could potentially be
Oh.
great.
That's wisteria vine, I believe.
Yeah, my neighbor's trying to have that cut down actually.
Okay. So if there was a motion for approval, mitigation's 100%, the tree was 25 inches at 2.5 inches. Replacement trees. 10, something.
And Joel, kind of looking down the road, where, is there a location near the street for a replacement tree?
If there was approval, I think it'd be important to try to get something back in the
Agree with
that
that.
canopy. So there would certainly have to be a requirement that there be on-site mitigation with a plan approved by staff.
It looks like there's 10 or 12 feet from the wall to that parking space.
Well, you could put something new in and put a riparian on the wall
new-
side of it.
on if we did that.
So I would say that, I don't know that deferral is gonna get us different information than what we're seeing. I think that, we need to rely on the information that's presented to us. We have a very thorough report. They sent stuff off to Clemson. We got verification as to what the issues are. I hate to see the canopy go. It's wonderful. But I do think that if there was a requirement to put something on site, now I don't know that all of it would end up on site. It seems like a lot of trees to try to figure out how to put on this property.
Can you do a mix?
But you could do a mix.
Yeah.
Requiring something in the front yard.
Some contribution to the tree fund?
I think we could ask for at least one of the replacement plant materials to be in the front yard and to put in an appropriate root barrier system. You know, perhaps closer to the wall, something that'll meet first, before its roots grow.
Size and tree.
You know, a 2.5 grows as fast as a 4 almost, so.
Is there, as you go through these photos, is there one that kind of gives you a better shot down the street? Because
Very well.
you know, because yeah, another oak behind.
I think in that section, it's crepes on one side and oaks on the other generally. Is this next to the like the row houses?
Yes.
Yeah,
Right, actually, you go to that site plan that they provided. You'll see those row houses, or maybe it was on. There you go.
no, it's County Street. Yep,
That was-
yep, there you go.
rows. Someone that's ready to make a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve with the to replace the tree and a combination of a contribution to, we'll call it the tree fund. With that,
So you're leaving that up to me, how many trees? Based
So
on,
it's-
is Glenn Gardner going to do the garden or something?
I had a landscape architect, just regional landscaping, but I will let whoever needs to do it.
No, he asked if Glenn was doing your plan.
We hadn't gotten that far, but we can.
you can choose your own landscaper. They would just need to work with the city to make sure they're compliant with what we're asking, what we're requesting, or what we are requiring.
Which is trees in the front only because there's a ton of space in the back.
No, something, one in the front,
One
one in the front.
So the replacement 25 inches, 2.5 inch per tree is 10 trees. So then you can determine if it's one in the front, 2 in the back, and check for the other 7.
Are all gonna be live oaks or any kind of.
If you, I would suggest a native canopy tree. Have your consultant decide that, and then the residual inches go to a contribution to the city street tree program, and the city plants trees in the neighborhood.
That's my motion.
So I want to be clear, a minimum of 2.5 inch trees on the lot, and then the residual to contribution.
Yeah, I'd say minimum 2.5 to 3 on the lot, and the remainder to the city's street tree fund.
But obviously the applicant has this, that you want to put.
And they have to
If they
submit
want
the
to do more
lot.
trees, they can do more trees.
Do we want to
Restate it.
restate?
Restate it, please.
So I recommend approval with the combination of the 2.5 of 2.5 inches minimum in terms of size, with at least one tree going in the front. Other trees may be placed in the back. You can work with the city to determine, or your landscape architecture can work with the city in terms of the placement of the trees. And
The residual inches as a contribution to the
and the residual interest would be a contribution to the tree fund. Now, if you decide you want to put in more trees, that's also acceptable. That's my motion. We'll get the secretary.
I'm waiting for Eric to
We
stop
need
running.
that person from council.
Is there a second on that?
I'll second that motion.
All right, so second by Mr. Jeff Webster, made by Kelly, second by Jeff. All in favor of the motion?
I in favor.
Is approved 4-0. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your report. Russell, I like the sketch.
We'll work hard on that.
I like it. Maybe item B1 is 89 Fishburne Street. TMS to be determined. Zone DR1F. Requests a variance from section 54-327 to allow the removal of 1 grand tree.
Okay, this is a relatively unique scenario in the sense that the city has zoned what is presently SC DOT right-of-way for diverse residential, a plat. Essentially what's happening, well, here's the application. I mean, this is the 89 Fishburne application. Charleston Redevelopment Corp., applicant F.A. Johnson, Julian Reed. This is the explanation of the variance test for removal of 1 grand tree. So here we are. So the city has zoned this DR1F, which is in with the neighboring properties to the north and west. It's presently DOT right-of-way. I'm not quite sure how this all came about, but I think another developer was hoping to maybe have the city ask the DOT to have this donated back to the city for his project, but that didn't work out. So the city still pursued the idea and the idea of building affordable housing on it. So we got the zoning in place. The platting is working its way through and therefore we don't have a TMS number yet. But we have an address assigned of 89, just because it can work on Fishburne Street, moving east to west. So it kind of reads as a city park. My colleagues tell me that it's not officially a city park. It doesn't have a name, I don't think, on it or anything, but it has that masonry wall with some wood. They almost appear to be wrought iron, but they're actually wood infill. And then at the end of Fishburne, you have like a little seating area. But what's unique is that the DOT has a drain pipe that traverses across the property, and much discussion about that pipe, because if the pipe were to be moved, it would unencumber the lot for housing, but we've exhausted that possibility. So we have a tree in the northwest corner, 26-inch, I believe it is, a live oak. To make a number of housing units work and maintain an easement over that pipe. Stormwater requires an easement. They're bending a little bit to offset that easement instead of having the pipe, right down the middle. And then they would work with the applicant to allow parking to occur over it. So much discussion. So the programming of the units, we had this structure staked out in the field. There's the oak. These are pictures submitted by the applicant. This is my red lines with the 4 corners of the structure staked out. So this would be the northwest corner, the front right. based on and its proximity. So there's no real means of pruning that tree back without totally taking the side off of it. I had David Grant, the city's urban forester, go out, and that's submitted as an email. Take a look at this. So these, again, this was my email back to the applicant. It's a 25.85 oak. You know, I was reluctant to state that the building staked out would have significant impact on the crown and roof plate. Crown, you know, there's no real good lateral branches to go back. You would do deadheading type cuts. The roof plate would be impacted, and see my photos. So it's the western side of the structure. So David went out and said that the heavy trimming, it would be one-sided, continue to expand over the street, causing side load, not a great situation. Small lots, you know, existing roots, enough space. He would have to recommend removal of the foundation, couldn't be shifted. So again, here's the stake. Vertical line, my back is between the stakes. I'm trying to like act as if I'm on the facade, looking north. Significant roof plate, slight lean already to the west tree. This is the southwest corner looking back. This is a two-story structure with a crawl due to the flood zone and what have you. And then you can't quite see it, but right on this facade is the end of this flume, this concrete flume, which there's two east and west of the drain box that you see, but the pipe is diagonal across toward the crosstown. So with that, staff recommends approval with the condition to plant 26 caliber inches of native street trees on the lot or in the residual city parcel, must provide a landscape plan for accuracy review and approval. Back to the site plan. This shows a landscape plan of the trees in that corner.
All right, thank you, Aaron. Is the applicant present?
I'm representing the applicant. Laura Cabinets with Johnson Lashover and Associates, and I believe the applicant is listening in Zoom, Mr. F.A. Johnson, the Charleston Redevelopment Corporation.
No.
He's on YouTube.
Oh, he's on YouTube.
Okay.
But yeah, but he can't speak. He can't speak.
Is there anything you'd like to add?
No, we've just, the fact that this is an affordable housing project, we've worked really hard to try to squeeze this unit in here. We're planning for 4 rental units. We've been working with the design review committee on the structure and the architecture of the structure. And right now, affordable housing is really needed in this area. And costs are affecting affordable housing as well as market rate housing. So anything we can do to get this going, we would greatly appreciate it.
All right, thank you. Anybody else present that's in favor would like to be heard? Anybody opposed?
And we received no written comments on this item as well.
All right, this item will be closed to the public. It'll be open to the board for discussion.
Well, this used to be a city park, because I went down and helped Matt lay out that wall and all the other stuff there, so I know that it has been in the past.
Well, it was SCDOT right away
Right.
as a park.
But the city's been maintaining it for,
Oh, yeah.
25 years, probably. What I wonder is why didn't anyone try to get the adjacent stub of Fishburne Street and make a larger lot to allow for more housing, and then you wouldn't have to go near the tree? Just a
Do
thought.
you need to abandon Fishburne? Well, because you do have
It's
two
it's
lots.
mostly used for parking.
Well, you have, you
There's 2
couldn't,
homes.
I mean, I guess you could do a driveway, but
Yeah. You could do a driveway
Alleyway,
and you
shared
could,
access
you could
easement.
split maybe it in half. Just the thought.
I would say, I think, we don't have the floor plans to look at, we just have that site plan. But, David's comment about if it was just a few feet further away. Is there any way to modify that floor plan? And I'm only seeing, is that correct, there's only 4.
So you have to meet some setbacks.
Need some setbacks.
You have to meet some rear setbacks. It can meet it doesn't have to meet the front because you can go to the far west and bring it as far forward as that unit. Believe me, they've looked at staggered, many scenarios.
So is it a continuous foundation? It could be piers or something for the building?
I'd have to refer to
I don't know if that's,
I
I
was
think when you
under
look
the
at,
understanding that it was a continuous floor.
yeah, but when you look at his vertical line, that tree already looks like it's been cut on the street side,
Oh, you bump.
and so
that's
then take this off and it's left with just this little.
So it's gonna be a continuous footing on the building? Rather than doing
Well,
piers or
It
something?
could be, but even if it's a pier, I think David said that the tree's gonna affect.
It's too much.
It's too close to the.
Too close to the verticalness of that
Of the
structure, but
structure.
if it were to be moved or
But
notched.
then you'd have to have enough space to move getting 10 feet out of Fishburne Street.
So, there's only like 4 parking spots. Does it need to have 2 per unit, or are they?
That's actually, I think, it's based on, don't quote me, but
It's
1
1.5.
units,
Number of bedrooms.
bedrooms.
Yeah.
I think it's 1 space per 4 units, affordable housing.
Yeah, affordable housing goes down, okay.
So they're providing 1 per unit.
The project with the city.
There is, I think, some city funding in it. And so that's why it's going to DRC.
Right. So it says housing and community development is involved
Oh, yeah.
in some
Beyond it,
form or
beyond it.
fashion. Yep.
So there's some restriction to make sure it's actually affordable housing.
Oh, yeah. This whole effort is for affordable housing.
I see, I guess that's the setback line here, and it's turning and coming this way. Our setback line this side, is there a dash line there? Could the structure not change shape, address this part more to take away from that there? I guess that's a question for you.
We've actually, that easement that we've got for the storm drain, we are right up against the corner of that easement. They required a 16-foot easement, and we've got 7 feet on one side and
Yep.
9
Right.
feet on the other,
According
and
to
it is
building
right
is-
up against it.
But this area in here, like the square footage you might lose here, it could get put back here, the buildings could shift, move, change. I don't see, I can't see the floor plan, so I have no idea what's,
Right.
we're saying 4 units, is it 2 on this floor, 2 on that floor, is it 1, 1, 1, 1? We don't know what it is.
So what we've got is 2 units on, let's see, 2 units, they're going north and south. There's 2 on top and 2 on the bottom, they're directly over the top of each other. And we looked at buildings that were like offset in the front, we looked at 2 buildings originally. We looked at offsetting the porches, so you had a porch on the front and a porch on the back. And this is where we ended up with the DRC.
And it's addressing Fishburne Street as the entrance for both, for all.
We're trying to be mindful to the cross town also.
It sure looks like they tried to squeeze everything that way as far as you can.
Any other
It's a
questions?
shame you can't count on 3 board.
Especially on Bennett.
Right. Well, because people park there. When people park there, when they're going to the park, but they'll go somewhere else.
All right, any other questions? We have a motion, the city's recommendation was approval, 26 caliber inches on site, and street banks. You know what I'm saying? Residual will go in
Are the
the tree
trees
program.
apartments? They're only apartments.
They're for
They're
rent.
rental units,
Rental.
yes.
for rental units. And so the, ideally, can you get back to the lot, Eric? So they have to submit this to TRC anyway, so they'll be submitting you a planting plan.
Yes. it's
And
going
what
through.
doesn't fit on the lot will then go into the street tree fund or be planted in a park nearby, maybe
Right.
at Mitchell or something. I make a motion to move to approve with staff recommendations.
I'll second.
All right, so motion by Jeff. All in favor of the motion?
I in favor.
Okay.
In favor, any opposed? Motion's approved. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Have a good evening.
All right, that was B2. B2 has been deferred, we get to B3. Maybank Highway, TMS number 31300000031 and 043, zone PUD. A request for a variance from section 54.327 to allow the removal of grand trees. Request a variance from section 54.327 to omit the 15 protected trees per acre requirement. 330 to allow the reduction of the impervious construction setback near the basis of 5.
Okay, so this is the application for Maybank Highway, owner being the Beer Baron, applicant HLA. The answers to the hardship test. So we're really dealing with the flag at the back, but to get there, we have a public road under construction, and then there's going to be an easement over a portion of the track to get to the actual property. You'll see that in just a minute. It is zoned PUD, Planned Unit Development. This PUD was written that would specifically allow a brewery and event space on the back portion. Presently, you have where the shed at Maybank is approximately where the entrance road is. It kind of S-curves through. And then that open field with the trees kind of peppered in it, due west of the lake. And east of Talent Lane is where the brewery facility would be, the restaurant would be constructed. This was the original site plan. So I went out on site with their consulting arborist and the team, and we evaluated the trees, and I think they previously evaluated the trees, and then I agreed or disagreed, and we do have a couple Fs that are in red. You'll see photos of those. And then quite a few Bs, and they tend to be the live oak species, and then you have some Cs and Ds, and they tend to be the laurel and the water oak. A couple other species thrown in there. The reason some of the grades are low will be explained in here in just a minute. But take note of this. So this shows the trees with the little circle with the crosshatch on it are the trees that they were recommending to reduce the impervious construction on. You can see one out front of the long linear brewery building, one by the entrance drive north, and one in the rear, and a couple others. I felt that I couldn't support those, so I will explain the modified request here in just a minute. But note the parking, how it had that V-shaped green space in one bay, and the proximity of those parks by the trees planned right. And then a sidewalk wrapping around that tree in the front of the brewery, and a couple other issues. So the applicant went back to work and came back with a revised site plan with only one encroachment, and that is the tree in the back of the restaurant. So you can see how they pulled the driveway south as you enter into the site. They got rid of that V-shaped green space and pulled the parking away from some others and rerouted some sidewalks in front of the building. Close-up of the tree in the back. So the idea is that you'll have a restaurant with a wonderful dining deck on the back, the office and the brewery is planned south of this by the up tree. But then a nice open space back there with a path and some seating areas and maybe like a little event stage. Like a view off the back of the restaurant toward the lake. And so let me just show you the context again. So I guess it's a neat little feature on the back of the brewery that, you know, the folks on the restaurant deck could see that. But I'll let the applicant explain. So 6 trees for removal. 15 trees per acre, because there's very little 15 or 8-inch trees. Basically, you see everything here. They can't meet that. And then the request for the, I believe, 5 encroachments is reduced to the 1. So this is a start of how they would work around that tree. You can see the X's would be spot piers, and of course, this is an elevated deck. And I'm suggesting that they use the diamond pier system. And that's a kind of unique system that you really only have to put a divot in the grass. You put that diamond there, and then you drive these steel rods with a compressor into the earth on that diagonal, and it kind of holds that in, meets wind load, and then you set your timber structure on top of it. So that's still to be determined, but it's actually going to be a condition. So they're working toward that. This is the list of the trees. On a lot of grand trees throughout the site. This is Arbor Care submitted by Danny Milliman. He walked the site with me and pointed out issues with the trees. I agreed with the grading. But what's unique, oh, here they are. So starting here, we have tree number 27, a grade D, broken top, storm damage, large cavity in the lower trunk. Tree 9, you're looking at a grade D, storm damage, large cavity. Again, this is the picture. Tree 30, poor, broken top, large cavity, lower trunk. Tree 32, poor condition, poor form, broken top. Tree 33, fair, broken, and tree 57. And then these are the Fs.
Can you go back to 57?
57, broken top. So what occurred, here's your 2 Fs, is in September 2015, if you all recall, we had that tornado event that crossed over Jones Island. And it happened to start basically across the street on the south side of Maybank, right across this property, and kind of tore up the tops of these trees. So that was 15. So now we're like 7 years later, we're seeing the decay and the broken tops and what have you. So very interesting. I was reminded of that. Grade F, I'm going in the wrong direction, I'm sorry. So with that, with the modified site plan, giving these trees more space, grading is going to be critical. We'll examine that. Must plant 161.5 caliber inches of native canopy trees on the project site. Must use 4-foot chain fences, tree protection barricades. Must have a certified arborist treat the protected and grand trees within 25 feet of any construction. And then must use the diamond pier foundation. I use the word must. If they come up with another system that I'm comfortable with Danny, but I think this is a really unique system and appropriate. For the section of deck within the TBZ, and I want that TBZ 1.5 times, so even further away from the trunk, this would have to be before you use another type of foundation. Have a meeting on site with the contractor, the project arborist, and the city to review the stakeout of the foundation prior to any construction. Back to the site plan.
Thank you. The applicant is present. Would you like to be heard to add anything? Your name and address for the record, please.
I'm Amy Chico with HOA, I'm a landscape architect. HOA, we're doing the land planning and civil work on the site. We also have the owner and operators, Mike Building and Andy Elliott here today. The facility is really high, this is all hopefully familiar with their existing facility on Maybank Highway, so the site selection for them, for the expansion of their business is very important. Trees play a huge role in that. You might have impressive sustainability goals for this project, and so in removing these trees, they're hopeful that they can work with arborists and have them removed and then kind of reuse them, dry them out and reuse them somewhere in their facility. As Eric explained, the topping when you're down in the bottom, on the ground level, there really isn't any other damage, and so the topping of these trees, as Eric was kind of assuming that there probably was a tornado that had gone through there, so I think it's apparent. So, in working initially with the site plan and getting into the site planning, we really kind of took into consideration where the healthy feed type trees were and worked with a sustainability expert with their architectural firm in placing the building and doing studies and studying the solar heating and sun angle. So the building was placed on an east-west access, like the restaurant and then the brewery. And so doing that, it was kind of apparent that the place to put this and keep those other trees healthy right in the middle of the site, affecting the trees that were asking to be taken out. So we got with Eric very early in the process, I believe in November. They were still really working, figuring out what we were going to do in order to walk the site and kind of get more feedback and buy-in of what actual trees we should be working around and the trees that we could possibly remove. And so that's why we've come to this concept and asking for the 5 trees to be taken out. But the encroachment tree in the back, putting the decking, people love to sit outside in the summertime, and as we all know, it can get a little hot. And so I feel like this one tree can be a great asset to the site. Putting the deck over it, I feel like we kind of take away a lot of the foot traffic that could be on that tree. Have never used the pier system that Eric is recommending, but we've got some good feedback from, I think, the contractor and the arborist that that it is a good system and it will do well. So it's great to see. I think that would definitely, versus doing your typical auger pile construction where it just goes through the root ends, that would be great to do that in that area. And then the 15 trees per acre that we're asking to have removed. The site, looking back at some historical aerials, it looked like maybe back in 1994, a previous owner had cleared the site, and so that there are not enough trees. We don't hit the 15 trees per acre starting out. So there's 7 additional trees that we're asking for, and they're all 25 feet away from the property line, and they fall within the drive aisle of kind of the front entrance, and then 2 or 3 of them fall within the detention pond all the way down at the end. I think they're just pines or gums for the most part. So those are the variances that we're asking for, and any questions, and we appreciate your support for this locally owned and operated business on John's side.
Thank you. Anybody else want to be heard? Yeah.
So, Mr. Chairman, we did receive 2 written comments. These were forwarded to you. I don't know if you want to read them into the record or just recognize them.
It looks like it's January 30th, 11:09 a.m. Maybe it was email or something from Carolyn Paulus, 2860 Thunder Trail, Johns Island. And the BZA should eliminate or at least further minimize the impact on trees. Preserving individual trees is important, but so is preserving groves of trees and limiting the impact of development on their root systems. Charleston zoning and planning brochure states as follows: trees are an essential natural resource, an invaluable economic resource, and a priceless aesthetic resource. Trees play a critical role in purifying air and water, providing wildlife habitat, from drainage, stormwater, and sediment control. They also help conserve energy by providing shade and buffering different land uses and beautifying the landscape. Tree protection and preservation regulations of Charleston County Zoning and Land Development Regulations Ordinance are intended to enhance the health, safety, and welfare of Charleston County residents. Nowhere does it say to help the developers. It's time to stop allowing all the natural beauty of trees on Johns Island to be destroyed. Should be destroyed. Okay, so then January 30th at 12:08 p.m. Chris Murray, 2114 Mimlet Lane. The priority on this for me is maintaining the gift of nature we have here on Johns Island. Please enforce that the developer work with the city and the BZA to eliminate or at least further minimize the impact on trees. Preserving individual trees is important, so is preserving groves of trees and limiting the impact of development on their root systems. It feels like developers always win from watching the streams of meetings. I'd like to say nature win for once over money. Thanks, Chris. Those two are against. And if there's nobody else present that's in favor, do you have anything you'd like to say in response?
Building, I'm the owner of Blood Tide Brewing, along with my partner Andy. I would just like to say that we fell in love with this property because of the trees. There's no historic building on there that we can draw on character from to give us that unique experience. So we're trying to do everything we can to save as many trees as possible and increase the health of the trees on the site. As you can tell, there's not a single bee tree that we touched. We wanted to make sure we were trying to preserve those as best as possible. All these trees have significantly damaged. The arborist was unable to make it here tonight. But I mean, he was strongly recommended when we were walking the site with Eric that these trees, especially the laurel oaks, only have a few years left in them at their current age and their current degradation. And so he was saying that, and by the time we're done with construction, by the time we've been open up here, very soon they're going to be a huge liability of people on the site. We are all in favor of planting as many additional trees as we need. We want. We plan on having a very biophilic design based on the guidelines from Living Building Challenge that we're trying to follow as closely as possible. So we're trying to do everything we can. One of the things that really hamstrung us was the drainage on the site. You notice that the pond is incredibly large as a ratio of the overall area. And so, we're trying to balance, stormwater retention with maintaining the tree as best we can, and it's a difficult balance. And we really think that we did a great job. And
All right. Thank you. Anybody else? This is your chance. All right. We'll close the application to the public and be open to the board for discussion, questions. I think I'll start out to say I think that the pictures are worth 1,000 words in this case. It was nice to see the graph of the tornado event. And I think a lot of times when we get comments from people that are opposed, they don't see what they're wanting to preserve. Pieces of the tree and that tree and what it has gone through. So I'm in favor of the application.
I think they did a good job in terms of locating around the worst of the trees, and the ones that are slated for removal are all either in the building footprint and the footprint of the pond, or to place with the walkways and entrances that just don't make sense. But and I do think that there's a good amount of the one person who's particularly concerned about the groves of trees. There are plenty of trees left to keep that grove-like
You see
atmosphere.
the list of the trees that are on that property that are remaining. It's nice. It's impressive.
So, you guys,
It's up to you now. Any comments, questions? Motion.
Make a motion for approval of staff recommendations.
You have a second by Mr. Calvin. All in favor?
Aye.
All in favor, opposed? Approved. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So,
It's not gonna be open by the 4th of July.
so is,
So that concludes the meeting?
Yes, yes, meeting